Midnight. Silence. Broken by a deafening crash. Steel twisted. Sparks lit the sky like angry fireworks. And then, screams. Terrified, desperate screams for help. A train had derailed. Hundreds of passengers were trapped inside. Flames rose into the night. But no firefighters had arrived yet. No paramedics, no sirens, just chaos and fear. In that moment, most people stepped back, but one young woman stepped forward. Her name, Clara Weiss, 23 years old. Final year nursing student. A quiet girl with long brown hair tied back in a hurry, a face that many overlooked, a student most people underestimated. As the wreckage burned, Clara trembled. She knew the danger, but still, she pulled off her jacket and crawled into the twisted train car. Someone yelled at her, harsh, almost mocking. "Are you crazy? You're just a student. Get back." But minutes later, the same people fell silent. Because Clara, this ordinary student, emerged from the wreckage leading 3 bloodied survivors to safety. That was only the beginning. Clara wasn't some superstar. She wasn't the top of her class. In fact, she was invisible. She worked part-time at Sunrise Coffee near the station. Every morning at 5 a.m., she unlocked the doors, started the espresso machines and served commuters rushing for early trains. Her friends would tease her. "You care more about lattes than saving lives." Even in nursing school, she was underestimated. Professor Henderson told students daily, "You're just students. Don't think you know more than the doctors. Stay in your lane." Clara stayed quiet, sat in the back, took notes with a cheap pen. No one asked her opinion, no one invited her into study groups. But here's the truth no one knew: Clara wasn't inexperienced. From the age of 12, she had followed her father, Sergeant William Weiss, a retired Army medic, to accident scenes in rural Montana. On rainy nights, she watched him save lives with nothing but shoelaces, sticks, or a belt. He taught her lessons. No textbook mentioned. "Medicine isn't about perfect conditions," he'd tell her. "It's about using what you have to save who you can." At nursing school, Clara was invisible. But at home, she was relentless. Her tiny apartment was filled with second-hand medical books and her father's old Army field manuals. She practiced CPR on pillows, practiced bandaging with napkins and coffee stirrers. Her classmates, they partied, dated, complained about exams. Clara? She worked shifts at the coffee shop, studied late into the night and trained herself to be ready for moments that might never come. Sometimes she'd call her father, her voice heavy with doubt. "Dad, maybe I'm wasting my time. Maybe I should just focus on making coffee." And her father would remind her in his gravelly voice, "Warriors aren't recognized in training, Clara. They're recognized in battle." She didn't know it then, but her battle was coming, and it would happen on an ordinary walk home. That night, Clara closed the shop. Her feet ached from standing 10 hours. Her clothes smelled of espresso and vanilla. In her mind, she rehearsed tomorrow's exam, calculating drug dosages, whispering medical terms to herself. The station was nearly empty. A few passengers waited for the midnight express. Clara barely noticed the headlight cutting through the dark. Then, crash. Bang! Screech! The midnight express to Chicago had derailed. 5 cars twisted off the tracks. Flames and smoke lit up the sky. Clara's sneakers slipped on gravel as she ran toward the wreck. "Is anyone trapped?" she screamed. A businessman grabbed her arm. "Are you insane? Wait for firefighters. You're just a student. You'll get yourself killed." But Clara pulled free. "The firefighters aren't here yet," she said firmly. Children's cries echoed from inside the wreck. Blood glistened in the dark, and Clara didn't hesitate. She crawled through a shattered window, lungs burning from smoke, glass slicing her arms. Her uniform tore. Blood dripped. Still, she pressed forward. Inside lay chaos. A young mother, unconscious, a baby trapped in a car seat. A man's leg bent in a way that made even Clara's stomach twist. No oxygen tanks, no gauze, no medical team. Only Clara, only her training. And so, she acted. She tore strips from her own shirt to stop the mother's bleeding, freed the crying child with steady, gentle hands, wrapped her leather belt as a tourniquet around the man's leg, even pressed her apron to the baby's mouth to shield him from the toxic smoke, and one by one, she dragged them out. To safety. That was just the beginning of the night that would leave even the fire chief speechless. Smoke, heat, screams. Clara's hands shook, but she didn't stop. She had just pulled 3 survivors to safety. But when she turned back, she saw shadows moving inside the second train car. This one was worse. The roof had collapsed. Steam hissed from broken pipes. The air was thick, toxic, and burning. A man in a torn suit grabbed her shoulder, desperate, angry. "Stop this madness, you'll die in there. Where are the real professionals?" Clara looked him in the eye. Her voice was steady, even though her heart pounded. "Someone has to help them right now, I can't wait." And with that, she crawled back into the fire. Inside, the scene was unbearable. Seats ripped from the floor, luggage scattered, burning, the metallic smell of blood mixing with smoke. On the ground, an elderly man, unconscious, his chest barely rising, his breath shallow and labored. Nearby, a teenage girl, blood streaming from her head, her eyes unfocused. She was slipping away. Clara's father's voice echoed in her mind. "Use what you have, improvise, save the one in front of you." Her shoelaces came off. She tied them tightly as makeshift bandages for the girl's wound. She tilted the old man's head back, cleared his airway, checked his pulse again and again. But Clara knew one more thing. Silence could mean death. She leaned close to the girl, whispering softly, "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma," the girl murmured, voice weak. "Emma Johnson." "Good, Emma. Stay with me. Tell me, where were you going tonight?" The girl blinked, tears mixing with blood. "College, visiting my boyfriend. We're supposed to get married next year." "Stay with me, Emma. Keep talking." Clara's hands worked while her voice kept the girl awake. Consciousness meant hope. Her arms bled freely now. Her uniform was torn, blackened with soot. But her mind, steady. Check the airway, stop the bleeding, treat for shock, prioritize who can be saved. When the fire department finally roared in, Fire Chief Martinez stepped out of Engine 7. He expected devastation. He expected chaos, but what he saw that made him stop cold. Survivors, sitting in neat groups on the grass, their wounds treated, their airways cleared. Someone had organized them. Someone had taken charge. "Who did this?" he demanded, looking. Around for paramedics, a shaken passenger pointed toward the wreckage. "That girl, not the young one. She's been pulling people out for 20 minutes. She's still inside." The chief stared. A girl. Through a broken window he saw her. Clara, dragging out another passenger. A man with spinal injuries, moved with textbook precision. Martinez's jaw tightened. "That's military grade. Field medicine," he muttered. "Who the hell taught her that?" His lieutenant whispered back, eyes wide. "Chief, I've seen those techniques in Afghanistan." Minutes later, Clara emerged again, her face streaked with blood and soot, her arms shaking. But her eyes, clear, sharp, focused. She supported another survivor, guiding him as gently as if he were her own family. Martinez couldn't hold back. He rushed forward. "Miss, who are you? How do you know all this?" Clara looked at him. Simple, calm. "I'm Clara Weiss, nursing student. I just did what had to be done." The chief blinked. Just a student? But her movements were precise, her methods flawless. Then another cry for help, this time from the locomotive car. Clara turned without hesitation. She climbed across twisted steel, her sneakers slipping, her lungs burning from smoke. There, under collapsed ceiling beams, she found someone who stopped her heart. A firefighter, unconscious. Radio crackling, his brothers calling out for him desperately. "Johnson, Johnson, respond!" But there were no oxygen masks left, no gear, no time. Clara tore off her own apron, already stained with smoke, and pressed it firmly over his mouth and nose. Then she grabbed his heavy frame, 200 pounds of dead weight, and she dragged him. Inch by inch, her chest burned, her lungs screamed, but she didn't stop until she pulled him into the open air. Fire Chief Martinez froze. His throat tightened. That was his man. Saved by a girl. How? How did this quiet, coffee-stained student, no combat-level trauma medicine. Paramedics rushed in. Doctors from General Hospital arrived. One of them looked at Clara's improvised work and whispered, stunned, "These are advanced trauma protocols, military level. Very few civilians know them." And in the silence that followed, Clara finally spoke. "My father, Staff Sergeant William Weiss, 82nd Airborne Division. He served 3 tours as a combat medic. He taught me everything he knew." That revelation hit Martinez like a thunderbolt. Because he knew exactly what that training meant. He had served in Afghanistan too. He had seen medics run through fire, using anything at hand to save lives. And now, here it was again. Not in war, not in combat, but on a quiet midnight in their own city, carried out by a student no one had ever noticed. Dawn broke slowly over the wreckage. Smoke still lingered in the air. The ground was blackened, twisted steel still hissed with heat. But scattered across the grass were survivors, alive, breathing, bandaged. Not by firefighters, not by doctors, by a single student nurse. When the official incident report was written the next morning, it shocked everyone. It stated clearly, Clara Weiss rescued 11 survivors in the first 43 minutes after the derailment, using nothing but fabric scraps, improvised tools and combat medic techniques passed down from her father. Tourniquets perfectly placed, airways cleared, bleeding controlled, spinal injuries stabilized, and, most important, hope restored. It was a report that left Fire Chief Martinez speechless. In his career, he had seen trained professionals buckle under pressure. But this, quiet, overlooked girl, she had worked as if she had done this 1,000 times before. By sunrise, news crews arrived. Channel 7, Channel 3, local papers. They all wanted the same headline. The miracle student nurse who saved 11 lives. Reporters chased Clara through the chaos, microphones in her face, cameras flashing. But Clara, she turned them all down. "Please, tell the story of the fire department and the paramedics. They're the real heroes. I'm just a student." But Chief Martinez wasn't about to let her vanish into the background. That afternoon, at an emergency city council meeting, he stood tall in front of the mayor and commissioners. His voice broke as he said, "If it weren't for Clara Weiss, we'd be planning 11 funerals today. Instead, we're celebrating 11 survivors." The mayor wanted to give her the city's highest honor, the key to the city. She refused. The governor's office called, offering a state commendation. She politely declined. To Clara, she had simply done what anyone should do. But things around her began to change. Back at nursing school, the classmates who had ignored her for 3 years now looked at her with new eyes. Professor Henderson, the same one who always said, "Stay in your lane," suddenly called on her in lectures. "Miss Weiss, given your extensive experience, how would you handle this scenario?" Clara remained the same, quiet, humble, still taking notes with her father's old pen. But now younger nursing students approached her in whispers after class. "Clara, could you teach us how to stabilize a broken bone without real splints? How do you stay calm when everything is chaos? Where did you learn to move? Patience without making them worse?" And Clara would smile gently, her answer simple. "Fear is normal, no one stays calm. You just remember your training. You save one person at a time, and you never give up on someone who can still be saved. For the survivors." Her face was unforgettable. Emma Johnson, the teenage girl Clara had kept awake with conversation, sent her handwritten thank you cards every month. Emma even changed her college major to nursing, inspired entirely by Clara. The elderly man Clara saved from smoke inhalation came to Sunrise Coffee every week. Always ordered the same drink, always left a $20 tip on a $3 cup. He never said much and just smiled as if saying, "You gave me more than coffee, you gave me back my life." And the firefighter Clara dragged out of the locomotive. Officer Danny Johnson. He later rose to become Fire Chief Martinez's second-in-command. On his desk, he kept a framed photo. His helmet next to Clara's faded medical bracelet from that night. When people asked about it, he always said, "I owe my life to someone most people didn't even notice." Even at Sunrise Coffee, things were different. Once Mrs. Chen, her manager, scolded Clara for reading medical books during slow hours. "Stop wasting time. Focus on coffee orders." But after the accident, Mrs. Chen proudly taped newspaper clippings about Clara to the shop's bulletin board. When curious customers asked, she would beam. "That's our Clara. Always knew she was special." Business boomed. People lined up not just for coffee, but to meet the quiet girl who had saved lives. Clara still smiled, still served drinks, still read her books between customers. But now, the eyes that once overlooked her were filled with respect. And at the train station, within weeks, workers rebuilt the damaged tracks. But before the wreckage was cleared, someone carved words into one of the wooden beams, words that firefighters later discovered during inspection. A student went into fire. A student brought out life. Fire Chief Martinez would pause at that beam every month during safety checks. Helmet pressed gently against the wood, silent, respectful, because he knew heroes aren't always the ones with badges. 3 weeks. After the accident, Clara's father, Staff Sergeant William Weiss, arrived from Montana. He had seen many battlefields. He had carried wounded soldiers through fire, but nothing prepared him for the sight of his daughter standing in front of him, not as the quiet girl he trained, but as the woman who had saved 11 lives in one night. Clara told him everything: how she used shoelaces as bandages, how she dragged a firefighter through smoke with only an apron pressed against his face, how the lessons he drilled into her, out in the wilderness, during long camping trips, had come alive that night. When she finished, her father didn't speak. At first, his weathered hands simply folded in his lap. Then, with tears in his tired eyes, he pulled her into a fierce embrace. "I trained you to save lives in war zones," he whispered. "But you saved lives in peacetime. That takes another kind. Have courage. Clara, I've never been prouder." 2 months later, Clara graduated, summa cum laude. Hospitals from 3 states begged her to join them, signing bonuses, special placements. But Clara chose General Hospital, the same place where she had once been treated like furniture during rotations. On her first day, head nurse Patricia looked her in the eye. "We all know about the train accident, but here, you start like everyone. Else, no shortcuts. Prove yourself through daily work, not dramatic rescues." Clara smiled. "I wouldn't want it any other way." And she did prove herself, quietly, consistently. Within 6 months, she became the go-to mentor for new trauma nurses. She launched evening workshops teaching improvised emergency techniques, not just to nurses, but to security guards, cafeteria workers, maintenance staff. Her words were simple but powerful. You don't need perfect equipment. You just need the will to act when others freeze. Her programs spread across the city, to fire departments, to schools, to community centers. Ordinary people learning extraordinary skills because of Clara. The ripples of that midnight stretched far. Emma Johnson, the teenage girl Clara kept awake with gentle conversation, graduated years later as a nurse herself. On her first ambulance shift, she carried Clara's improvised pressure bandage in a frame, a reminder of the night that changed her life. The elderly man Clara rescued created a scholarship fund for nursing students from working-class families. He named it The Quiet Heroes Foundation. Its mission? To give opportunity to those who were overlooked, just like Clara once was. And Officer Danny Johnson, the firefighter Clara saved, rose through the ranks. Now, as second in command, he trained every rookie with new words etched into the department's culture. Never dismiss someone because they lack credentials. The best help may come from the most unexpected hands. At Sunrise Coffee, life carried on. The espresso machine still hissed, cups still clattered. But now it had become a gathering, place for first responders, firefighters, nurses, medics, all stopping by to share stories, lean on each other after hard nights. Above the counter, Mrs. Chen hung a brass plaque. Heroes drink coffee here. Most of them don't even know they're heroes yet. 10 years. Later, Clara still worked at the trauma center, still carried her father's pen in her pocket, still taught anyone who wanted to learn, because she never wanted her story to be about medals or attention. It was about readiness, about paying attention when others looked away, about stepping forward when stepping forward is terrifying, and that is the heart of Clara's story. Heroism doesn't always arrive with uniforms or sirens. Sometimes it looks like the barista you barely notice, the student sitting in the back row, the neighbor who quietly waves but never speaks. On that midnight when steel twisted and screams filled the air, Clara proved one truth. Courage doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It simply acts. Ordinary hands can save extraordinary lives.